A decade of trust creates a psychological blind spot. When someone is in your life for 10 years, you stop looking for the exit strategy. Raghav Malik, a wealthy Delhi businessman, kept his rural Haryana farmhouse under the care of a man named Raju. Raju started at 20 and was now 30. 10 years of flawless service, making him feel less like an employee and more like a permanent fixture. In 1990, a letter arrived from the electricity department. It warned of a total grid shutdown from exactly 9 p.m. to 3 a.m., a specific window of total darkness in an already isolated location. Long-term reliability effectively disables our internal alarm systems. Because Raju had never failed him, Raghav had no reason to scan for threats, leaving him physically and mentally exposed. Raghav arrived at the farm to find the routine broken. Raju wasn't at the gate with his usual music. There was only a heavy, uncharacteristic silence. It triggers a primal alarm in the human brain, the sense that a predator has entered the territory. He found Raju cowering in the stables, claiming a headless woman was stalking the fields. The caretaker's fear seemed genuine, pulling Raghav deeper into a narrative of the supernatural. Raghav lives with a heart condition so delicate that his last cardiac event nearly killed him. For him, a sudden shock isn't just a fright, it is a potential death sentence. At 9 p.m., the grid shutdown began. In the dark, the farmhouse turned into a theater of psychological stress. Glass shattered in empty rooms, laughter echoed, and shadows moved where no one should be. Raghav's heart couldn't sustain the pressure, and he collapsed. We instinctively blame ghosts for things we can't explain, because the alternative is harder to process. It is easier to believe in a headless woman than to accept that a person you trust is trying to kill you. Raghav wakes up in the dark at 2:50 a.m. He is still on the floor, but the house is quiet, save for a low conversation happening just a few feet away. His wife, Mohini, is on the other end of Raju's phone. They had calculated that the terror of the haunting would trigger a fatal heart attack, allowing them to claim the estate and giving Raju a 5% stake in the fortune. This scale represents a mental recalculation. Raju weighs a decade of life against a 5% commission. He bridges the gap by reframing murder as a payment. The 5% isn't a bribe, it's overdue salary for 10 years of youth spent in an isolated field. When loyalty is reduced to a ledger, the human element disappears. The price just has to be high enough to satisfy the stories we tell ourselves. At 3 a.m., the lights return. The sudden brightness breaks the illusion. Raghav stands up, his fear replaced by a cold focus as he holds a knife to Raju's throat. Raghav doesn't react like a betrayed husband. He reacts like a CEO managing a hostile takeover. He doesn't waste time on hurt feelings. He looks for the leverage. He outbids his wife on the spot. He offers Raju double, 10% of the estate, with one condition. Raju must kill Mohini as soon as she arrives at the farm. When Mohini arrives, expecting a funeral, Raju switches sides for the final time. He kills her in the hallway and drops the knife. The highest bidder controls the board. In a world governed by financial leverage, even the most intimate conspirators are just pawns in someone else's game. Raju stands over the body, waiting to collect his 10% fortune. He has traded everything, his honor, his safety, and his future, for a promise. Raghav delivers the final blow. He had sold the farmhouse a week ago and already moved the money. He doesn't own the property, and the 10% he promised Raju represents 10% of nothing. Raju committed murder for an asset that had already been liquidated. He is left with the blood on his hands and zero financial gain. The public record reflects a simple story, a tragic affair between a wife and a servant that ended in a murder-suicide. Society views Raghav as the grieving victim, the author of the only version of the truth that remains. Truth rarely survives a tragedy of this scale. The history of the event belongs to the survivor. But there is one detail that doesn't fit the story. How did a businessman from Delhi know exactly what time the rural power grid would fail? The meta-theory suggests the letter from the electricity department was never real. Knowing his wife and caretaker were growing greedy, Raghav likely forged the blackout notice himself to force them to act. He took a deliberate risk. He knew his heart might actually stop from the stress, but he used himself as bait anyway. He built a pressure cooker and stepped inside, knowing his enemies would destroy each other if he just gave them the darkness they needed. Greed is a poison that mimics the taste of sugar. The man you thought was the victim was the one who designed the cage.